Hello and welcome to this week's video. This week I'm reviewing the BMW G310 GS. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for the audio on this video. Unfortunately, my microphone in my helmet didn't work, so I'm having to record this and dub it over. So it's not going to be the best audio. So what is the BMW 310 GS? This is now the smallest adventure bike that BMW do. Very different to obviously the big 1200s, the 850 and the 750. But it still looks like a GS, and it looks a much bigger bike than a 300cc. So, like I say, looks wise, you can tell it's a GS. It has the front beak, it has all that same kind of style. So the seating position is very familiar to anyone that's ridden a GS or in fact any sort of dual sport or adventure bike. So you're sat quite upright, wide bars. The good thing with this GS compared to other ones is its height. So you don't need to be big to ride this bike. Your feet are flat and it's a lot lower than even the sort of 850 that I rode recently. Comfort wise, super comfortable. Suspension works really well. Lots of familiar things. So switch gear is all pretty standard stuff. There's nothing fancy like rider modes, but you can switch ABS off. The mirrors, I think the same mirrors as all the other GS's. They work really well. Everything just feels like a normal sort of GS. The only thing I would mention is the screen. So the screen is tiny, so think of it more like a naked bike rather than an adventure bike, and I did find that a bit of an issue. There was like zero wind protection, so having been out all day on the bike, then my visor was absolutely covered in flies, which really shows that there's not any protection. You can get aftermarket screens, and that would definitely be something that I would do on this bike. So to the engine itself, as we said, it's 310cc, in fact I think it's 313cc, but it's around that. It's only 34 horsepower, so again a far cry from the sort of 94 horsepower of the 850, but it's fine. It's also single cylinder rather than a twin. That works well, but it is fairly vibration free as long as you're not too fast or too far up the rev range. So I did find that there's some vibrations once you're above sort of 60 odd mile an hour. You could feel some vibration through the seats and the pegs. The engine does sound good once you're up the rev range. So if you're trying to crack on and you're giving it lots of revs, change gear and keep nailing the throttle, then it sounds quite good. It doesn't sound great at sort of low revs or just sort of cruising along though, but it's a single cylinder and it's 300cc, so it's never going to sound amazing. I think that could be addressed though by changing the exhaust. I know that people like Akropovich do make an exhaust for this, so that's going to sound a lot better. It's certainly something a bit like the screen. It's certainly something that I'd do if I had this bike. So who do I think this bike's aimed at? It's obviously an A2 friendly bike in the UK, so new riders or people that can't have a higher capacity machine, then it would work well for that. I think it'd be a great commuting bike. You've got good visibility, it's comfortable, and unlike most adventure bikes, because it is physically smaller, it doesn't feel really wide, and it's really light as well. So it would be really good for commuting as well as for going away at weekends and having sort of rides out then. As a touring bike then, as I've mentioned with this screen, without that screen I think it would be hard work, and also at those sort of higher speeds. Don't think it'd be great on a motorway, so how much touring you'd want to do on this bike I'm not sure. I think it's more about the adventure bike looks than actually going away for a couple of weeks. I wouldn't want to drive to the south of Spain or something on a bike like this. But like I say, it's a 300cc bike. It's probably not aimed at that. The other problem I'm having when riding this bike is trying not to compare it to other adventure bikes, because every other adventure bike I've ridden has been sort of minimum of a 650cc up to the sort of 1000cc. They're in a completely different price bracket and a different class, so it's really not fair to compare this. I think what I need to do is ride some of these small ones. So there's the Versys 250, there's a V-Strom 250. I think it'd be good to sort of ride one of those just to compare like for like. As I said, they're in a completely different price bracket. So if you're looking at an 850 GS, you're looking around 10 grand. This is just over 5 grand, so it's half the cost. So it's not really a fair comparison. So I think for the price, then it is a good bike. But compared to an 850 GS, then it doesn't feel as good, and you'd sort of expect that. So on to my usual 3 things I like and then any negatives. So the 3 things that I liked best about this bike are: 1, its looks. I think it looks a great bike. Anyone that likes that adventure style bike will think this is brilliant. It looks a bigger bike than it actually is. The second thing that I really liked is its value for money. As I said, 5 grand for a BMW adventure bike is a bit of a bargain. The third thing I liked was the suspension. So yes, it's not got sort of electronic ride height changes, all that kind of stuff. The rear spring you can adjust the preload, the front suspension you can't adjust at all. But it works brilliantly. It soaks up the bumps like anything. So initially when I got on, I thought it was a bit soft, but having ridden it all day, then it was just brilliant on sort of A and B roads. It completely got rid of bumps. But as well as that, it actually handled really well too. So it wasn't a case of, yeah, it's great over bumps, but doesn't go around corners. It still handled nicely. So onto the negatives. Again, these are fairly picky and can all be addressed. So the first one, and this is the biggest one for me really, is that screen just doesn't give any protection. It's just like riding a naked bike, so I definitely have to have an aftermarket larger screen on it. As I mentioned, the engine needs to sound a bit better, I think. On the standard exhaust, it doesn't sound great. And then, keeping with the theme of the engine, then the vibrations, I think at those higher speeds, then on a long trip, that might get a bit grating. But, like I say, this is a 300cc machine, so it's probably not fair to compare it to some of the larger ones. So in summary, what did I think of the 310 GS? I do think it's a great bike. I think it's good for new riders, for smaller riders that would like an adventure bike. For someone that doesn't want to spend a load of money for something they're going to use a few times a year, I think it'd be good for weekends away, that kind of stuff. But if you're going to do any longer touring, it's probably not the right bike for you. For commuters, I think it's a cracking bike. It's got road presence, it looks nice, it's really nice to ride, it handles well and soaks up the bumps. So I do think that sort of commuter is the ideal person for this. And it's not going to cost a fortune to run. I think I averaged about 75-80 miles per gallon, which is pretty impressive when you compare it to bigger bikes. It's also really nimble, so around traffic would be great. So finally, I'd just like to say thanks to the dealer who lent me the bike to do this review. That's Barrie Robson Motorcycles. They're the official BMW dealer in York. So if you're around, then pop in. Super friendly guys there. It's a family run business. They'll make you a brew. They've got all the different bikes there. They've got a really good selection of demo bikes too. So as I say, if you're in the area, then do look them up, and thank you again to them. So thanks for watching this video. Again, apologies about the audio. So if you did like the video, then please click that thumbs up and give us a like. Please subscribe too. We have this weekly show with new reviews, a bike build, all sorts of stuff going on. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks.